Okay, welcome to the second part of Module 2's lecture. The objectives here are to be able to identify different types of project management structures, to understand the strengths and weaknesses of different project management structures, to appreciate the significance that organizational culture plays in managing projects, to be able to interpret the culture of an organization, and to understand the interaction between project management structure and the culture of an organization. The project management structures here, some of the challenges to organizing projects within the framework of an organization are the uniqueness and short duration of projects relative to ongoing longer-term organizational activities such as programs, the multidisciplinarity and cross-functional nature of projects creates authority and responsibility dilemmas, as we will see. When executive management is thinking about the appropriate structure, the best system is going to balance the needs of the project with the needs of the organization. So the organizational structure is something that's studied in a number of disciplines, and most people are used to seeing the functional organization. And that is where different segments of the project are delegated to respective functional units. So you're going to have your sales division, your marketing division, your operations division, etc. And it's separated by function, and that's typically the way that you'll see many organizations set up. In a functional organization, coordination is maintained through the normal management channels when we're thinking about how projects are implemented. And this structure is used when the interest of one functional area dominates the project, or one functional area has a dominant interest in the project's success. And here you'll see the standard functional organization. As I mentioned, you'll have your marketing separated from your engineering division and your manufacturing separated from your procurement divisions. The project management is going to occur project coordination is going to occur across these divisions, and these are the functional divisions of the organization here. Some of the advantages to a functional organization when thinking about project management are that there's no structural change required. There's a lot of flexibility. You have in-depth expertise and easy post-project transition. Some of the disadvantages then can be a lack of focus, poor integration, and that's called over the cubicle, because if you have one person in one division and over the cubicle that might sit somebody in another division, unless they're all kind of integrated into a project team, you're going to get poor integration and not as much diversity among your project team, as well as not enough perspectives. They are slower than other types of organizations, and there can often be a lack of ownership. So at the other end of the spectrum from the functional organization is a dedicated team, and often this is called a projectized organization. This is where teams operate as separate units under the leadership of a full-time project manager, and the projects there are the dominant form of the business. So the functional departments are really just providing support in these cases. So companies organizations like NASA and companies like Lockheed Martin are really good examples, or Boeing, really good examples of the projectized organization, because they organize their structure so that it is all around the project team. So when you look at the organizational chart of a projectized team, you'll notice that all of your support functions, the marketing, engineering, manufacturing, procurement, they exist outside of the project. So you have a project manager that's over here with their project team, and they have quite a bit of independence to work towards achieving the goals of their project, and the divisions within the organization serve primarily as support. So some of the advantages of this type of organization, the projectized organization, it makes things a lot simpler in terms of you don't have to go from one functional manager to another to try to claim resources for your project, that type of thing, because all of the other divisions are really supporting the projects. They're faster, much more flexible, very cohesive project teams, and cross-functional integration. Some of the disadvantages then are they are very expensive. And again, if you think of the types of organizations that we talked about, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, NASA, you can see that there is an extreme amount of costs related to this type of organization. There can be internal strife, and what I mean by that is you'll see a lot of competition among or between the different projects under an organization. So they may start taking on kind of a life of their own, that project team. Limited technological expertise, and then finally, there is a very difficult post-project transition, because as those project teams exist outside of the other divisions, once the project has come to fruition and been completed and closed, many times people are left without knowing what project they might be working on next. So it's much more difficult than if you were part of a functional division. So here's a way of looking at a projectized organization, organizational structure, and again, you've got your divisions, your functional divisions up here operating as mainly the service providers to the various projects that are ongoing under the organization. And you have your projects, project here and a project here. Depending on what type of project, you might have various different types of project teams available that are dedicated to that project. So we've seen both sides, the functional organization and the projectized organization, in terms of a dedicated team. And what's in the middle? Well, in the middle we have a matrix structure. It's a hybrid organizational structure, and it's overlaid on the normal functional structure. So there's really two chains of command. So a project team member could have a supervisor within their functional division, but they also have the project manager that they would report to as well. The matrix structure optimizes the use of resources. So it allows for participation on multiple projects while also performing your normal functional duties. And this achieves a greater integration of expertise and project requirements. If we think about the over the cubicle, well, now you still might work over the cubicle from another functional division, but you are also working at least some of the time with some of those folks. So there is a higher level of integration across the organization. Here you'll see the matrix organization structure, and as you can see, we still have our functional divisions over here: marketing, manufacturing, engineering, etc. But now you've got your projects down on the side, and they go across this way. And of course, your team members would be pulled, one from the projects, a couple from design engineering, a professional from electronics engineering, a couple of professionals from mechanical engineering, technical documentation, you'll have a team member. And this kind of really shows you how much more integrated the company can be, because you'll have engineering folks working with manufacturing folks and marketing folks on a daily basis. So much you can achieve a greater amount of integration with this type of structure. Of course, you'll notice the Project A team will report to their project manager here, but they'll also report to their functional manager. So this slide shows you the division of responsibilities between a project manager and a functional manager when you're operating in a matrix structure. So on this side over here, the project manager needs to know what has to be done, when the tasks should be done, how much money is available for the project or for the task, and how well has the total project been done. On the other side, the functional manager is going to ask, how will it be done? How will the project involvement impact our normal functional activities? And how well has the functional input been integrated? And then in the middle, of course, you have some sort of collaboration between the two. It is going to be who's going to do the task, where is it going to be done, why, and is it going to be completed satisfactorily. So there's some different matrix forms, and the most distinguishing characteristic between a weak and a strong matrix is the relative influence that the project manager has over the project participants and the functional managers. So in a weak matrix, the project manager's role is limited to coordinating project activities. The functional managers then are responsible for managing their segment of the project. So in essence, the project manager has little formal authority over the project. In contrast, in a strong matrix, the project manager controls most aspects of the project, including design trade-offs and the assignment of project personnel. So the functional managers are responsible for supporting the project completion. So they're more of a support role in this case. And a project manager in the weak matrix is not likely to be involved in performance appraisals and compensation decisions, while the project managers in a strong matrix would normally do those things. Obviously, a balanced matrix is going to be some blend of both. So some of the advantages of a matrix form of organization are they're very efficient, very strong project focus, much easier post-project transition than in a projectized organization, and there is a greater degree of flexibility. Some of the disadvantages can be dysfunctional conflict, infighting, stressful, and they can be much slower than a projectized organization. So I guess the question here is, when would you use a strong matrix instead of a dedicated project team? Well, both structures can be quite effective. The strong matrix would be recommended when the organization can't afford to have people work full-time on the project, and when the culture of the organization supports the dual authority structure that we talked about. Dedicated project teams would be recommended when speed is essential to success and there's not enough project work to warrant a formal matrix structure. Dedicated project teams are also recommended when the prevalent culture within the organization does not support collaboration and innovation. So two major considerations in determining which structure should be used are the percentage of core work that involves projects and resource availability. Organizations whose main business evolves around projects should really consider a projectized form of an organizational structure. Some organizations that might have mainstream operations and mainstream projects should use a matrix style structure. And when resource availability is limited, then a matrix structure should be used that allows sharing of your personnel resources across projects and operations. So organizational culture defined, the PMBOK does a great job going over organizational culture, and that's in section 2.1.1. But the culture of an organization can impact the effectiveness of different project management structures. some cultures that do not encourage teamwork or collaboration and cross-functional integration, they need a stronger project management structure. They really need that to be successful. On the other hand, though, a functional matrix can be effective in an organization where the culture of the organization is conducive to project management. So we get to a point where we want to ask ourselves, what's more important for successfully completing a project, the formal management structure or the culture? And really, both are important, and an argument can be made for either structure or culture. You can argue that culture is more important than structure because it more directly impacts behavior. A positive culture can compensate for the inherent weaknesses of the formal structure. For example, a functional matrix can be effective if the norms and customs of the organization value teamwork and effective problem solving. But on the other hand, a functional matrix is likely to not work very well in a negative culture that encourages competition and maybe, looking out for yourself. So you could also argue that an organization can circumvent a negative culture by creating an independent project team or a strong project matrix. In either case, the strategy is to insulate the project team from the dominant organizational culture and create a unique project subculture. And so that's the end of the lecture for this section of Module 2. So I hope you are enjoying it so far.